For years, they looked like the perfect couple, elegant, wealthy, and deeply in love. But now, Pippa Middleton has finally revealed the quiet truth behind her marriage to James Matthews and why she refused to live with him full-time. No scandals, no screaming matches, just one emotional confession that changed everything. "I needed peace, not a palace," she admitted, and those few words have sparked questions royal watchers never dared to ask. What really happened behind closed doors? Why did she step back from the life she once dreamed of? This isn't gossip, it's Pippa's truth, and it's more powerful than anyone expected. A picture-perfect start that was never the full story. When Pippa Middleton married James Matthews in 2017, the world saw it as a modern fairy tale. It wasn't a royal wedding, but it had every touch of class. The lace gown, the countryside church, the luxury cars, it was all planned down to the last petal. They smiled for the cameras, held hands, and waved like a dream couple. To most people watching, it felt like a calm beginning to a life of wealth, comfort, and happiness. But the perfect image was just that, an image. Behind the grace and glamour, there were signs that things weren't completely in sync. While Pippa was settling into a peaceful family rhythm, James was still living at high speed. Their appearances at Wimbledon, charity events, and high society dinners became less frequent as time went on. And when they did show up together, something felt different. Polished? Yes. Present? Not always. They weren't fighting in public. There was no scandal or tabloid meltdown. But people close to them noticed a shift. They just weren't in the same rhythm anymore, a friend of the couple quietly said. The smiles were still there, but the warmth had cooled. It wasn't one big moment that changed everything. It was a series of small realizations. Pippa, who once moved through London's social scene effortlessly, started choosing privacy over parties. And James? He stayed locked in the corporate grind. Even early in their marriage, insiders say Pippa began pulling away from that public spotlight. She focused more on her family, her home, and most importantly, her children. The dream had started to change. And for Pippa, the real fairy tale wasn't about tiaras or public praise. It was about peace. And she wasn't finding that under the same roof anymore. What looked perfect from the outside was simply too loud for my inside, Pippa once admitted to a friend. But if their lives looked different from the start, it was their personalities that revealed how deeply mismatched they really were. Two different worlds, one marriage. From day one, James and Pippa were very different people living in very different headspaces. James Matthews is a man of structure, schedules, and spreadsheets. As the CEO of a billion-pound hedge fund, he runs on deadlines and deals. He's constantly working, on planes, in meetings, on calls. There's no pause in his world. He's built for business, and that's where his focus remains. Pippa, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. She grew up in the same warm, grounded family as her sister Kate. After experiencing intense media attention following the royal wedding, she began leaning toward a quieter life. Her focus was on creating a cozy home, enjoying nature, and raising her children with intention. She didn't want to be photographed at every dinner or fly across countries for business deals. She just wanted peace. At first, their differences felt like a balance. She brought calm. He brought drive. But over time, it became a mismatch. He was always going. I was always waiting, Pippa reportedly told someone close. The love was there, but it couldn't bridge the lifestyle gap. As James took more trips and juggled more business projects, Pippa stayed home more often, raising the kids almost entirely on her own. There wasn't a single moment where things broke. It was slower than that. Gradually, the life they built together turned into two separate tracks. Pippa wasn't angry. She was exhausted. Exhausted from pretending they were a team when she was doing everything solo. Exhausted from smiling for photos when the love was fading in silence. And eventually, she stopped pretending. "We didn't break. We just stopped meeting in the same place," she once said quietly. That's when the physical distance began. Because what started as emotional disconnection soon became a decision to live apart. Why living together became optional. As time went on, insiders say Pippa and James slowly started living separate lives, even while technically still married. James's constant travel for Eden Rock Capital kept him away for long stretches. And Pippa? She stayed in Berkshire with the kids, focusing on school drop-offs, family walks, and creating a warm home life. At first, it was just circumstance, but eventually, it became choice. She stopped following him, a close friend said, not out of anger, but out of survival. Uprooting 3 young children every time James had to switch cities or attend an event wasn't sustainable. Pippa realized she felt more calm when she stayed back, kept a routine, and gave the kids consistency. It wasn't about control, it was about stability. They no longer traveled together. She stopped going to his company parties. He missed birthdays and holidays more often. The space between them kept growing. And then, Pippa quietly moved herself and the kids into a different wing of the house. From that point on, they were together in name, but apart in rhythm, routine, and even reality. People asked questions, of course, but there was never a dramatic announcement. No big fallout, just 2 people slowly realizing they no longer fit into the same space. Sometimes, it's not about giving up on love, Pippa reportedly said. It's about giving yourself permission to live how you need to. I stopped asking him to stay. I started asking myself what I needed. But this wasn't the only shift. The emotional changes at home were starting to reveal even more truths about Pippa. Truths that would lead her to finally speak out. The truth behind the distance. At first, the separation was subtle. They were still legally married, still occasionally photographed together, but those moments became fewer and far between. After January 2022, Pippa and James almost completely disappeared from public events. No red carpets, no charity balls, not even Wimbledon, where they used to be regulars. And for a couple who once made headlines for their stylish appearances, their silence was deafening. Friends close to Pippa began to notice a pattern. She was building a life without James in it. She'd started spending most of her time at their Berkshire estate, raising the kids, managing their home, and embracing a slower, more personal rhythm. James, meanwhile, was still very much in London, still working long hours and often flying abroad for meetings and deals. The emotional gap had quietly turned into a physical one. And while tabloids speculated about a separation, Pippa stayed silent. But privately, she confided in a friend, "This isn't some dramatic falling apart. It's just living separately because it works better than pretending." She wasn't angry. She was tired. And that's a very different kind of heartbreak. The quiet kind. The kind that creeps in over time until pretending feels heavier than the truth. Their marriage hadn't exploded. It had simply emptied. The spark faded. The effort slowed. And once Pippa realized she felt calmer alone with her children than in a life that required constant adjusting, she chose stillness. Not out of resentment, but out of relief. "I didn't leave him. I just stopped running to keep up with a life that wasn't mine anymore. But what truly changed everything for Pippa wasn't distance. It was motherhood, and how it rewrote her entire definition of happiness. What motherhood taught Pippa about herself? Becoming a mother didn't just shift Pippa's focus, it transformed her soul. With Arthur, Grace, and baby Rose all arriving within 4 years, her life became beautifully chaotic. There were messy mornings, sleepless nights, and giggles echoing through the halls. And somewhere in the middle of all that, she found herself. Not as a public figure, not as Kate's sister, but as mum. With 3 little ones depending on her, Pippa's needs shifted overnight. She no longer cared about appearances. She didn't miss the London scene. Her days were full of snack prep, cuddles, and muddy shoes, and she loved it. "I found peace in the rhythm of my children," she once shared with a friend. Meanwhile, James's life didn't slow down at all, and that created a crack neither of them could fix. While he answered emails late at night and rushed off for business meetings, Pippa was reading bedtime stories and planning playdates. She began to realize something powerful. She was doing this on her own, and she was doing it well. Not perfectly, but presently. That presence became everything. "I stopped waiting for someone to show up," she admitted. "I was already here." Over time, she realized that love isn't just about sharing a home, it's about sharing time. And if that couldn't happen anymore, then maybe the arrangement had to change. Motherhood didn't pull her away from James. It simply grounded her in a way that made his world feel more distant than ever. "I didn't drift away from James. I landed exactly where I needed to be, with my kids." But even after accepting that distance, one feeling remained. And it's what finally pushed Pippa to speak her truth, the feeling of constantly pretending. "I was tired of pretending." Pippa has never been one to overshare. She's known for staying composed, avoiding headlines, and keeping her private life off social media. But recently, she broke that silence. In a quiet conversation with someone close, she said what many had suspected. "I was tired of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't." It wasn't bitterness, it was honesty. The act of putting on a brave face while quietly living separate lives had worn her down. For years, she played the role expected of her: smiling wife, stylish mother, society figure. But behind the scenes, she was raising 3 children largely alone and managing a household that felt more like her own than theirs. "I was being applauded for a life I wasn't really living," she said. Every time she appeared in public, the questions came. Where's James? Are they still together? And every time, she deflected. Because saying the truth out loud felt like an admission of failure. But eventually, the silence became heavier than the truth itself, and she reached a turning point, choosing to stop performing. She never blamed James. She didn't accuse or criticize. She simply acknowledged what so many couples face but rarely say, that sometimes, even with love, a shared life can stop working. And when that happens, the strongest thing a woman can do is stop pretending and start living honestly, even if it means doing it alone. It wasn't about walking away. It was about walking in the direction of my peace. And just like that, the fairy tale faded. But in its place, Pippa found something real. And what came next was a life no longer made for appearances, but for truth. James's high-speed life left no room for pause. James Matthews is not a man who slows down. As CEO of a billion-pound hedge fund, his world is built on speed, structure, and results. Every day brings new meetings, new deals, and new flights. He's always planning, always building. But what Pippa eventually realized is he was rarely present. Even when he was home, he wasn't really there. He'd be at dinner, but his mind would be elsewhere, one close friend of Pippa revealed. And it wasn't about love. James loved his family. But his version of love came wrapped in calendars, late-night calls, and investment stress. Meanwhile, Pippa's world was filled with diaper changes, school pickups, and soft little hands reaching for hers. The more James leaned into work, the more Pippa leaned into home. The difference wasn't just in lifestyle, it was in value. She began to crave the slow, the messy, the real. And the more she noticed James couldn't give her that, the more she emotionally shut off. Not with hate, but with clarity. She reportedly told someone close, "If we don't sit down for a meal or share a bedtime story, then what are we sharing?" The silence that followed wasn't anger. It was a realization. James never intended to live apart from her. But his version of together wasn't the same as hers anymore. That difference became a quiet heartbreak that no one saw. But she felt every day. He never meant to leave emotionally, but I noticed I was dining with absence more than company. And as their lives kept moving in opposite directions, what came next was unavoidable. A new kind of relationship formed, one that looked less like a marriage and more like a polite distance. The separate paths. They now walk. Today, Pippa and James still live under the same umbrella. Technically, but emotionally, they're on separate roads. Friends describe it as peaceful detachment. There are no public fights, no nasty divorces, no court filings, but there's also no real connection left between them. What they share now is co-parenting, property, and mutual respect, nothing more. Sources say James still provides financially. He supports the children, visits when he can, and attends important family moments. But he and Pippa haven't been spotted alone together at a meaningful event in years. Their last public appearance before Wimbledon was in January 2022. Since then, quiet. Not cold, but distant. Meanwhile, Pippa has flourished quietly. She's often seen in Berkshire running errands, taking her kids to school, biking through country lanes. No bodyguards, no red carpets. Just a woman who has reclaimed her peace. She may not be wearing a crown, but she's living like a queen in her own right. They don't speak badly of one another. In fact, their friends say they both still have a quiet respect for the years they shared. But it's become clear, this is no longer a passionate marriage. It's a cooperative arrangement. And Pippa's refusal to live under James's shadow full-time was her way of reclaiming herself. Sometimes the strongest bond is the one you gently release with grace. But what made Pippa finally say it out loud after all these years? Why speak now? The answer is simple. It wasn't about drama. It was about choosing truth over silence. Why Pippa chose to stay quiet until now. For years, Pippa held it all in. She smiled at events, posed for photos, and politely dodged questions about her marriage. She never fed the media what they wanted. And that wasn't just good PR. It was self-preservation. After being dragged by the press in her 20s, she learned to protect her peace at all costs. But as time went on, keeping the illusion alive got harder. Friends started to ask gentle questions. Even her children began noticing their father was always gone. And the older she got, the more she felt pulled to live honestly, not just quietly. So when asked recently about why she didn't live with James full-time, She didn't dodge it anymore. "I needed peace, not a palace," she reportedly said. A short sentence, but one that says everything. It wasn't about rejecting James. It was about reclaiming herself. At 41, she's no longer trying to please the press, meet royal expectations, or pretend a life works when it doesn't. She didn't go to war. She didn't write a tell-all. She simply chose truth. And by doing that, she gave herself the most powerful gift of all: freedom without fanfare. For Pippa, walking away from the performance was the bravest act she could have made. "I stayed quiet out of protection, but I spoke out for peace." So what does Pippa's life look like now? It's not royal, it's not glamorous, but it's real. And for the first time in years, she's living on her own terms. The emotional fallout. No one talks about. Behind the calm exterior, there was real emotion. Even though there was no scandal or shouting match, choosing to live apart from someone you once planned forever with still hurts. For Pippa, the emotional fallout didn't come from fighting. It came from finally accepting the truth. And sometimes, that's even harder to carry. There were quiet tears, especially at night when the kids were asleep. There were holidays spent explaining where Daddy was or why plans kept changing. She kept her answers simple, her tone soft. But inside, she felt the sadness of slowly letting go. "I wasn't angry," she reportedly told a friend. "I was just done pretending I wasn't lonely." James felt it too. While he may not have shown it publicly, friends say he was aware. He missed moments. He knew things were different. But he didn't know how to fix it. Or maybe he simply didn't have the time to. The space between them became something both of them accepted. Quietly, respectfully, and with a heavy heart. They never hated each other. They just drifted so far apart. They could no longer reach each other. No screaming, no betrayal, just two people trying to live different lives under the same name. "That's what no one talks about," Pippa confided. "How sad it is when you don't break. You just stop belonging to the same future. Sometimes you don't fall out of love. You just grow out of the life you built together." But from that quiet sadness came something surprising, a new strength. Because instead of chasing a picture-perfect life, Pippa started chasing something else entirely. Clarity. What Pippa really wants now. After years of adjusting, waiting, and smiling through tension, Pippa found something simple, but life-changing. She found out what truly matters to her. And it wasn't a billionaire lifestyle, media praise, or elite social status. It was time. Time with her kids. Time with herself. Time without performance. She spends her mornings getting the children ready for school, sneaking in morning walks, and enjoying her coffee in peace. No limousines, no headlines, just calm. "I didn't want more," she reportedly said. "I wanted less noise, less pressure, less pretending." And in that space, she found her joy again. She doesn't need constant validation from the press or public approval. She's not chasing status updates or fighting to stay relevant. She's a mother, a woman, and a human who values presence over pretense. While James's world keeps spinning, Pippa has chosen to slow hers down, and that has made all the difference. This new version of Pippa isn't bitter. She's not broken. She's just real. She's allowed herself to walk away from the illusion and walk towards something healthier, more honest, and more stable for both herself and her kids. I stopped asking what looked perfect. I started asking what felt peaceful. And with that decision came a quiet goodbye. Not to love, but to the fantasy of what it was supposed to be. A goodbye to the life she thought she wanted. Pippa once dreamed of the perfect family. The glamorous yet grounded life, side by side with a man who adored her. And for a while, she believed she had it. The wedding, the estate, the kids, it was all there. But what she realized later was this: the life she thought she wanted didn't fit who she truly was anymore. It wasn't a failure, it was a shift. The woman who once chased perfection had evolved. She no longer wanted the polished version of life. She wanted the raw one, the one with muddy shoes, messy mornings, and quiet dinners with her children around the table. That was her version of happy, and she wasn't going to compromise it anymore. Her refusal to live full-time with James wasn't a rebellion. It was a redirection. She saw where her soul felt safest, and she chose to stay there. That takes courage, especially in a world where people expect women, especially women married to wealthy men, to just endure. But Pippa didn't. She stepped back. She claimed her space. And in doing so, she proved that leaving behind a fantasy doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're finally living a story that's yours, not one written for appearances or applause. The life I dreamed of at 30 wasn't the life I needed at 40. So now that the truth is out, what does this next chapter look like for Pippa Middleton? A new chapter, written on her own terms. Pippa's not disappearing. She's just rewriting the script. These days, she's embracing slow living, country walks, bedtime stories, gardening with her kids. Her days are full, but peaceful. Her home may not be front-page news anymore, but inside, it's filled with real laughter, real love, and real moments. She's still married, technically, but emotionally, she's living as her own person. And she's okay with that. Her children are growing up with stability, fresh air, and a present mother. She's showing them that strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's soft. But it's powerful. There's no drama, no revenge. Just a woman choosing truth over image. She may never give a big TV interview or write a tell-all memoir. But in her own way, by simply telling the truth, she started something bigger, an honest conversation about what it means to grow, evolve, and protect your peace. And that's something we can all learn from. Because Pippa Middleton didn't walk away from her husband in anger. She simply walked back to herself, and she did it with grace. This isn't the end. It's the real beginning I didn't know I needed. So now that Pippa's truth is finally out in the open, what do you think? Was she right to live separately? Did she protect her family by walking her own path? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold royal revelations that go beyond the headlines. And just like that, the truth is out. Not with headlines or scandal, but with honesty and quiet strength. Pippa Middleton didn't make a dramatic exit. She didn't hold press conferences or sell her story. Instead, she chose something far more powerful: peace. Her decision to live apart from her husband wasn't about anger or betrayal. It was about protecting her children, preserving her sense of self, and stepping away from a lifestyle that no longer reflected who she truly was. In a world obsessed with appearances, Pippa chose authenticity. And in doing so, she reminded all of us that real love, whether it's for a partner, your children, or yourself, sometimes means walking a different path. James Matthews didn't fail her, nor did she fail him. Their lives simply moved in different directions, and rather than force a version of happiness that didn't fit anymore, Pippa gently let go. That takes more courage than most people ever realize. Now she lives a quieter life, but one filled with real moments, laughter, bedtime stories, and early morning walks. No red carpets, no pretending, just truth, just presence, just a woman who stopped chasing the life she thought she should have and embraced the one she truly needed. So what do you think? Was Pippa's choice bold, or just the reality of modern marriage? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold royal revelations, because sometimes the quietest choices echo the loudest truths.